Dylan has been doing some long form videos lately, and I think that's really neat, because it's less of the TikTok craziness and more of just him actually explaining what's going on. So yeah, this one, it's a 1909 recipe called Food for the Gods, which I swear to you, Mama Dragon has made for me and the family on multiple occasions. I did not know this recipe was this old. Also, it's really, really good. And yeah, T, I wish I had a kitchen, A, this well organized, and B, this large, because holy shit. All right, 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Gentles and ladies, oh, that was my rear. Welcome back. Welcome back to the kitchen. Gentles and laymen, my name's Dylan Hollis. And I say, if I told you there was an old school mysterious dessert called Food for the Gods, would you have a clue what I'm going on about?
I would, actually.
I certainly didn't, or rather had not, until I plastered my peepers upon this unit right here. Yes, this ancient text is certainly among my top 5 favorite books on cookery. Not only because it possesses the ominous title of Michigan Federation Cookbook, but also because it is one
Hi, Ralphie, what's going on? How are you?
And it's a community cookbook. You know how feral I am for those. However, despite being made aware that Food for the Gods is a thing, recipes are typically named in a fashion that allow us to deduce what the dish is going to be, i.e. a recipe for chocolate chip cookies is likely to be a cookie.
Right.
And a carrot cake recipe is hopefully going to be a cake. Failing that, you look at the list of ingredients and infer from such. This recipe is truly puzzling as it has neither. The name is tremendously undescriptive as food is the bare minimum for edible substrate, and the ingredients list is puzzling to say the least. To make matters worse, I found several instances of desserts calling themselves Food for the Gods amongst my old cookbook collection, each with their own unique ingredients list and unique take on the method, leaving us completely up in the air as to what on earth it is. So naturally, why don't we strap it and
I've never. So like I mentioned a little while ago, Mama Dragon has made this recipe, this very specific recipe, Food for the Gods, for the family on many different occasions. I had no idea this recipe was this freaking old. Because again, this is from 1909. It's a little cut off, but it's 1909. 1909. What the hell?
Starting with the 1909 recipe, then we'll be fast-forwarding a half-century and baking a 1961 iteration.
Oh, wow.
After that, how about we ask the internet as to what on earth Food for the Gods is. And then finally, we will be baking a recipe from my cookbook. Yes, that's right.
Yes,
the cat's out of the bag, and I couldn't be more excited to tell you that
I need to pre-order this. Oh my god, I keep saying this. Because it's dropping this summer. Baking yesteryear. I desperately need to get a copy. Oh my god.
My own cookbook called Baking Yesteryear. It comes out this July everywhere books are sold. It's available for pre-order now, and I'll go ahead and plaster those links all over the place.
Yes.
Honestly, it's going to be so
Is this related to the concept of ambrosia?
Yes, I've been writing a cookbook. Sorry about that.
I think so.
How about we start by
I think so, Ralphie. I think so.
Your Michigan Federation cookbook. Now, the Michigan Federation is not some strange spin-off of the Illuminati. No, rather, it is the MSFWC, which is a mouthful, and you say, Dylan, that is tremendously helpful. What on earth is it? And it is the Michigan State Federation of Women's Clubs. A member of
Women's
the
Clubs?
General Federation of Women's Clubs, and this particular chapter dates back to as far as 1895.
Oh my god.
I suppose in the context of this book is not that long. As you see, it is dated September of 1909 with the opening statement, to the Club Women of Michigan, the homemakers and homekeepers of our state, this little book of rules for good cookery is dedicated. May its usefulness ensure, with an I, it's welcome into every home. That is tremendously formal. Anyway, enough rambling.
That is very formal. What the hell?
Our Food for the Gods recipe falls under the classification of puddings.
What?
If I turn the page, you can behold the glory written by a Miss Cora Tullis Reed from Benton Harbor. And as was typical for the time, you can see that we do not have a separate list of ingredients followed by a method. No, everything is condensed into paragraph form, which to be honest, I quite prefer depending on what it is I'm making. But alas, we start with the whites of 6 eggs, followed by 2 cups of sugar, 6 tablespoons of cracker crumbs. What cracker they mean, we have no idea. It might be me. Next up is 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a cup of chopped English walnuts, and 1 cup of cut dates. Do you see what I mean? Just precisely what this is.
I assume UK-style pudding. True, Ralphie. Very true.
Some eggy Welcome to the
Eggies!
same
Yes,
countertop
he said
where I
it.
prepare my meals
He said
alongside
it.
the oft-disastrous TikToks. But before we beat up our whites of the eggs, as the book so calls, we're going to wipe down our vessel with some white vinegar. I'll admit that I do not clean this countertop for TikToks, but I did just clean it for YouTube, so I reckon I must think more highly of you folks. But anyway, we wipe this down with white vinegar just to get rid of any residue. Or
There's a
fats
difference?
that can
Oh,
prevent your
T,
egg
absolutely.
whites from being beaten up stiff. Time for eggies.
Yeah.
You know, I used to
Okay.
say-
So this is gonna be an entire segment of itself, because the difference between a UK pudding and a US pudding is more than night and day. Because US puddings are like, you know, like Jello pudding cups, etc., etc. UK pudding is more of a terminology. UK pudding can be used to describe any style of dessert. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. I'll get into it later. It's a whole thing. Trust me. It's a war of nomenclature between the US and the UK.
Break my eggs one at a time, but I have since become converted to this method, whereby you crack everything into one vessel and then grip up the yolkies. Do you hear that murder of crows outside?
Those are some loud ass
Are you
crows.
trying to, like, take down a deer? And I must say that I love my wooden spoon and my whisk. When it comes to beating egg whites stiff, I am a user of mixers.
I just use a stand mixer.
All right, this is stiff, or at least stiff enough by my standards. And you'll see that the next instruction is not an instruction. It just says 2 cups of sugar. So we don't know whether that means to fold it in or to beat it in. But typically with egg whites and meringues, you beat in the
You would
sugar
beat it in, yes, as a meringue, yeah. Because it's a classic French style meringue. All you need is just egg whites and sugar.
Cup
Yeah.
number 2. All right.
Yeah, this is classic meringue.
Sugar beaten in, and as you can see, it's
That's
really
this
quite thick
classic
and
meringue
tangy
right there.
at this point.
Huh.
We don't know what the recipe writer wants. We don't know if they want
Okay.
us, to beat this further to stiff peaks with the sugar in, or just move on as is. My gut tells me to beat this a little bit stiffer, and then we'll prepare everything else.
That's what I would think, yeah. Because you need stiff peaks for something like that.
Decision, because it just says 6 tablespoons of cracker crumbs, meaning 6 tablespoons of soda cracker crumbs, saltines as we know them, or 6 tablespoons of graham cracker crumbs. The National Biscuit Company, Nabisco, was already mass-producing graham crackers by 1898, and the same was true for saltines in the 1870s, so it could go either way. But truthfully,
Yeah.
I have half a mind to say that it is soda crackers, because if they wanted graham crackers, they would have specified, but I suppose that argument
Interesting.
works both ways. But we're going to go with graham cracker crumbs today. Truthfully, it's not a bad assumption, and you'll see why a little later. Plus, graham crackers were all the rage in the 1900s
They really
and the
were.
1910s. Sylvester
I
Graham
goddamn-
really had a hit
I
on his
love
hands.
food
Now, as
history
you can
so
see,
much.
6 tablespoons is not a lot. That's a mere tablespoon of crumbs, a tablespoon of dry ingredients per egg white. But even more perplexing is the addition of 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Does anyone have any idea as to why this is in here? Not only is the ratio strange, but with all the air in the egg whites, I don't quite see the point. I do, however,
was
see the
about
point
to
in
say.
nuts and dates. They are both lovely, especially when the former comes after the latter.
I was about to say, you don't need any more leavening agents. You don't. There's so much egg whites in that already. You don't need any more leavening agents. Why is the baking powder there? For anyone who's unaware, I've been trained as a professional chef. I've spent half a decade in if I include schooling, almost a decade in the food industry. I can tell you with pretty certain confidence, with that many egg whites, you don't need any more leavening agents. That seems excessive to me. That seems excessive to the point of useless. That seems excessive to the point of uselessness, I'm not gonna lie. That's a little strange to me. That's a little strange to me. Not leveling agent, leavening. Let me spell it. Leavening agent. It's like from the verb to leaven or to aerate, to puff, essentially. Because it's weird. I wouldn't say it's an issue, the baking powder. It's just weird, the addition of it in this particular recipe, because you don't need puff, you don't need floof from the baking powder, because the egg whites are so aerated enough already. There's your leavening agent, there's your fluff. So, like, the addition of baking powder just seems excessive to me. I don't know. It's strange. It's strange.
Here come the dates. The secret with these is just to use scissors. It is so much easier and your knife doesn't get all gunky. Alrighty, with our cup of dates, that means we have all of our ingredients set up, but I want you to notice how, again, we don't have any instructions on how to mix everything together. But further than that, we have no instructions on just what to bake this thing in. It could be anything. So I've made the decision to preheat the oven to 300 degrees, because that's what slow means. And for mixing everything, we're going to start by folding in our crumbs.
I would say just fold everything carefully.
And for the pan, I have chosen a 12-inch springform, because I think that's the best size for the amount of meringue that we have. So
that's a lot. It is a lot of meringue. You're gonna.
And as we fold, it is going to deflate because meringue does not take lightly to visitors. And then in goes.
Meringue does not take lightly to visitors. It does not.
Then we are going to gloop this into our springform.
Unless you do a Swiss-style meringue, which is another tangent and a half. Oh my god.
I have no idea, but this is nearly 7 cups of batter. 7 cups of.
I don't know, Dylan.
So
you might need a bigger pan than that. That is gonna expand like crazy.
Yes. Should we smooth it out? I don't know. We could do anything. There aren't any rules. I am grateful that it tells us the temperature and the time, but again, without specifying the size of the bakeware, that could mean nothing. But anyway,
this is gonna be interesting. This is gonna be interesting to say the least.
Good night. With our first food for the gods in the oven, I just wanted to share with you another example from the Michigan Federation Cookbook, which gives a perfect account of what I mean by how strange the recipes can be written using strange units of measurement. Oh, it's just bizarre. So if we turn to page 37, under the candy section, you'll find an entry called molasses candy.
Okay.
The premier recipe of this section, and it goes as follows. To every teacup of brown sugar, take 1 large kitchen spoon of molasses. Butter half the size of an egg. Cream tartar size of a pea. Boil without stirring till it hardens in water. Just before taking off, like a plane, I suppose.
What the
add
fuck?
1 tablespoon of vanilla. Pour on buttered tins and pull when cool.
I am so glad we use standardized measures for recipes now. Oh my god, that drives me insane. That drives me insane. Why? Why? Oh my god. Oh, that drives me up a fucking wall. Why? I'm gonna move on before I get an aneurysm from that. Jesus Christ.
I mean, if you didn't know your way around the kitchen, you would be hopeless. I would not be able to replicate that, I'm sure of it. Now for that, let's see what we've got here. Oh, are you ready for the big reveal? The grand finale. It's food for the gods! So, what do you think? It's just a bit of a white mass, isn't it? And it's deflating as we speak. So, we're gonna let this cool down, decouple it, and then find a way to eat it. Alright,
interesting.
This is going to crack, it's just part of the game. Also, if you're curious, yes, this pan is closer to 11 inches than it is to 12. We call that Amazon sizing. Come on, let's go. Please cooperate. Whoa. Minor casualty. Don't let that upset you, because as you'll see, as soon as you try and cut it, that will happen anyway.
It's
completely cool. It is just, it's strange. It is a poofy meringue, but underneath it is
interesting
gooiness, which leads you to say, "Oh, did I do it wrong?" But then you must remember, this was in the pudding section.
This was, yeah, actually.
Cream.
Most meringues are kind of gooey in the center when you think about it, because when they bake, you know, a sort of shell will form, but the inside is still kind of chewy. I don't know. I'd try this. I would redo the ratios immensely, but I'd try this.
But looks, it tastes really quite nice. It's got my favorite flavor profile, which is sweet, dates, and nuts. But it's just, well, it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? Looks horrendous. For one, we will never know what consistency this was supposed to be without a specified size of bakeware. 300 degrees Fahrenheit could be anything. If you're baking little meringue cookies, 300 degrees Fahrenheit for a half hour, they'll be quite hard and firm. But if you're using like a 9-inch springform pan, it'll be even more goop than this. What makes me think that this was not supposed to be hard and firm again was the fact that it was in the pudding section. Secondly, it definitely was too sweet without any salt to cut it, and personally, it didn't have enough structure. I don't know what the point of the graham cracker crumbs was, but it was
same, actually.
Lost. But I am not lying to you when I say that this horrible, horrendous, ugly-looking dessert has an exceptionally awesome flavor, so much so that I desperately wanted to make it work. I must have baked this recipe from the Michigan Federation Cookbook 24 times, changing the baking time, the baking temperature, the size of the pan, the ratio of the
I feel like, yeah.
crumbs using graham cracker crumbs. I went full ham. And then I'm scouring my old cookbook collection behind you for recipes of the same name. All right, folks, listen up. It's 1961. Specifically 1961, in the small town of Lindsborg, situated in the north of McPherson County, Kansas. A town known as Little Sweden, because very nearly a third of its inhabitants are Swedish.
Ralphie, don't get me wrong.
But within Lindsborg is
Ralphie, don't get me wrong. Whenever I do homemade cheesecake, I always go for the graham cracker crust, because it's 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. One of my favorite types of blind bake crusts to do. Like, legitimately. One of my favorites. One of my favorites. This was a mess? Yeah. As expected from a recipe from 1909. That is a bit of a mess in general, let's be real here. I'm going to sneak into your house like a raccoon so I can eat your cooking. Okay, so if I hear a noise in the middle of the night, Ralphie, I know it's you. Got it. Understood. Glad we ironed that out. I also missed a question in chat. What is a meringue? A meringue? In Michigan, these sound like current southern measurements. Fair, son, fair. It's me. I snuck onto a bus. A meringue is any sort of confection that's been made with specifically just egg whites and sugar. And again, this is going to be a massively big tangent that I'll get into later, but it's got to do with the structure of egg proteins and the egg whites itself. So like, yeah, if anyone actually has questions for me, save them until we're done with the video, because I will answer anything that you might have a question for. Definitely.
Private Bethany College, and the Bethany College's auxiliary program put out this year cookbook titled Measure for Pleasure.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Measure for Pleasure does not sound like the title of a cookbook. Measure for Pleasure sounds like the name of an OnlyFans page. Okay? I'm just going to throw that out there. Measure for Pleasure does not sound like the name of a cookbook. It sounds like the name of an OnlyFans page. I'm going to move on before I get too many questions about that. Yashi, shush.
But because it has Swedish desserts and like Scandinavian classics sprinkled amongst American dishes, it's very bizarre.
Interesting.
But for our purposes, it is interesting because on page 191 we have none other than a food for the gods recipe.
All right, let's see what the 60s version looks like.
You can see, well, it's completely different. If we
there is, of course, the creator platform for sponsoring chefs. OnlyFans. Nice, you did it, Rich. You did it. You fucking did it. Oh my God. OnlyFans. God damn it. I was gonna make a joke like OnlyPans, but you know what? No. OnlyFans is far better. Well done.
Well, it's useless. We have egg yolkies now. That's still half the amount of eggs, though. We also have half the amount of sugar, and it's now in powder form. The egg whites we're familiar with, and we have some added flavor with a teaspoon of vanilla. Moving to the leftmost column, gone are the cracker crumbs, and in its place is flour.
Okay, this seems far more
it's important to
solid.
Note that the abbreviation for tablespoon wasn't quite standardized yet, and in many ways still isn't. So this book uses an uppercase T for tablespoon and a lowercase t to denote teaspoons. Speaking of teaspoons, we have 2 teaspoons of baking powder. That makes a return despite a small amount of flour. As does a cup of walnuts, specifically English walnuts, and again, our friend, a cup of dates. So looking at this ingredients list is a bit like looking at the child of a friend that you know very well, right? They're their own unique person, but you can see features of the parent sprinkled throughout. In our case, we have
Interesting.
baking powder, English walnuts, and dates, alongside the small amount of dry ingredients compared to wet. However, this food for the gods ingredients list from 1961 resembles
The return of the
pudding
controversial
more so
baking
than the
powder.
first 1909 recipe, despite the fact that that was situated within the pudding section. And when I say puddings, right, I don't mean
Motherfuckers using a cup of dates and I can't even get a single one. SMH. That's just so sad. Can we get 5 gifted subs, please?
All the way up to boiled or steamed affairs like figgy pudding or sticky toffee pudding. This ingredients list of I would call a baked pudding or a sponge. We would call it.
Yes, I was about to say, a baked pudding is basically a sponge cake waiting to happen. I was about to say, I didn't mean it, seriously. Yeah, shit. Holy crap, dude. That was entirely a bit I stole. That was entirely a bit I stole from Minerva, aka Party Demon Ass, but thank you. I appreciate the 5 gifted subs, Yashi. Thank you so much. Good God Almighty. Holy moly. That is, thank you. Thank you. That was entirely a bit, but thank you so much, bud. I appreciate it. Thank God you did say 100. I'll be honest. I don't know how I'd react. I don't know how I'd react if somebody suddenly dropped 100 subs, because I don't think I've gotten more than 5 in a single go. But thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much. What was I saying? Oh yeah, I was about to say a baked pudding is essentially a sponge cake waiting to happen. So like, I'm glad Dylan made, I'm glad Dylan made that connection, because my brain immediately went for that connection as well.
Sponges and baked puddings, this does not have any fat nor milk. This is in a class
That's
of
strange.
its own. I say, let's explore. Our first instruction is to mix together flour, baking powder, nuts, and dates. Also, look at the size of these bananas. I don't know where you Americans are getting these things. I have seen smaller plantains. 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 teaspoons of floof powder, as I want to call it. Once again, I'm being a miser and only using regular walnuts. The perennial edition of the date. Now,
I love dates. Dates are tasty.
We've looked at thus far both specified dates. I actually have 2 other recipes, both from 1909 and both from Boston for Food for the Gods, that don't specify this. These 2 recipes are quite fond of dates. So this is our flour, baking powder, nuts, and dates all mixed up. So now we're moving on to the eggs. We're to start just with the yolks. So let's crack everything into this one, and then we will pull the yolks. Come on, Yoki. Now we need to beat these 3 egg yolks together with 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, which is what half of a quarter teaspoon. So it's just 1 or 2 little grains. We beat until lemon colored.
Interesting.
It's already lemon colored. That's lightened up a bit. Then we have a cup of powdered sugar. Now this is an interesting addition because powdered sugar has some added starches, like cornstarch in there, which gives like a
I love that emote too. It's so good.
It's added to. So let's see where this goes. Oh, it's getting thick. All right, it is quite thick and custardy at this point.
Yeah, that's very custard.
Our egg whites, we will fold that into here with our vanilla. Hello, old friend.
Interesting.
Now, if you're curious as to why it's asking us to fold in our beaten egg whites separately into our beaten yolks and sugar instead of, just beating together the whole eggs and the sugar in one bowl, it's because this contains thousands, millions of little tiny air bubbles that would not form if we beat it together with the yolks.
Yep.
Because
there's our leavening agent right there.
Stop this from forming. You'll see this in a lot of old school cake recipes where you would make a cake batter with the yolks and butter and sugar and all of those standard batter things. And at the very end, it would ask you to beat the reserved egg whites and fold it in normally in 3 additions. It creates airiness, lightness, like an angel food cake-esque.
Yep, just like an angel food cake, 100%. Yep.
This goes. You will fold this in, and then the rest. You see how fluffy and foamy and poofy this is?
Oh, yeah. That's actually quite pretty. That's nice.
Fold this in. And then finally, our first mixture. It's different. Now it's asking us to put this into a 10-inch square pan. And you bakers out there will be sharing confusion because that's not really a size that exists. Or at least, not a size that we're familiar with. Normally with square pans, we deal with 8-inch or 9-inch.
I have a 9x9 squared. I definitely don't have a 10.
So I do have
What?
a 9x11 inch greased pan here, which is the same surface area essentially. So we'll be using that. Oh boy!
I would have just used what I had, which is a 9x9.
degrees Fahrenheit until it pulls away from the sides of the pan, or until
Okay.
it's done with a toothpick test. In you go.
The toothpick test never fails, chat. I'm telling you that right now. The toothpick test never fails.
I did want to share with you the fact that even though this is from 1961, it is indeed a facsimile. So it isn't. The first edition was in 1961. It had a second edition in 1970.
Huh.
This is the third 30th anniversary edition, printed in 1991.
1991. Interesting.
The Bethany College in Lindsborg, as well as the Bethany College's auxiliary, still exists. So technically,
You don't
if I
say.
use these reorder forms at the back of this book, it should not go unanswered. All right, it is pulled away from the edges, and the toothpick is clean. Pretty solid, but we're gonna let this cool completely and not poke any more holes in it because our serving instructions are a bit unique. You ready?
Really? Really?
Because to serve, we are to break this into bite-sized pieces, place in a sherbet glass, and top with whipped cream. So break into pieces physically. I'm not cut, and I don't own a sherbet glass because I'm not 98 years old. This looks like burnt croutons. You know, I can't say that this looks appetizing. So if you're curious,
See, that's kind of the food for the gods I'm used to, because I swear to you, this looks exactly the same as when Mama Dragon makes it for the family, like 100%.
Being about 300. And yeah, cooled down completely. This is certainly firmer and more crispier meringue-like top, but really quite an eggy bottom. And I'll tell you, this smells eggy as well. So let's serve this with whipped cream. I have this stuff, which you know really is not that bad. It's the Cool Whip that you got to look out for. I'm not quite sure what Cool Whip is, but this is just aerosolized. Let's go.
Would still eat. No, same. Big same, Ralphie. I need to get my mother's food for the gods recipe.
Now you see,
Because I swear,
am
whenever
not
she
a
makes it,
fan
it's
of this
delicious.
one. It's eggy in that it smells eggy, it tastes eggy, even when completely cooled, and it feels eggy. It's rubbery and chewy in a manner that's not quite appealing. And I'm just not quite sure what it's trying to be. I mean, serving crumbled up, like, crusty things with whipped cream on top. Have you ever had a dessert look like that? That nice date flavor that was present
I will
in the
say, I don't know how she does it, but my mother's food for the gods recipe, the texture is incredibly close to like brownie texture. And I don't know how she does it. I'm going to have to pick her brain, because I'm actually going to be visiting her next weekend. So that's probably going to be my best opportunity to ask her, like, listen, I need this recipe because it's been eating at me for years, literal years. So like, oh my God, I need to know like what she does. I need to know what she does to make it that sort of texture.
The recipe that I was telling you about is not present here. It's lost. And the vanilla is not making itself known. Overall, just making it a strange dessert. You know, it has the
But still eat it though.
like
It looks
taste
delicious.
almost of an omelet. And that's not, I don't want that in my desserts. Now, if you're anything like me, you would say that this food for the gods was
Hey,
baked for too
Bird, what's
long,
going
and the
on?
first recipe
I've
wasn't
never even
baked for
heard of
long.
this dessert before. I saw the video of Dylan's a few weeks ago. I saw this video and I did a double take because I have grown up with this recipe. Excuse me, I just hiccuped. My mother makes this recipe regularly for family get-togethers. Like, she makes this religiously almost. So I saw this and it kind of blew my mind. I'm just like, wait, like that food for the gods? What?
Enough.
I'll be doing good,
However,
Bird.
This did not begin to pull away from the sides of the pan, nor be able to have a toothpick be removed cleanly until it reached this point. So although this was an interesting stop on our journey through food for the gods, it's not a stop I'm inclined to stay at for too long. Yeah, just weird. Which is why now we are moving on to the internet. We're gonna ask Google as to what it thinks food for the gods is, because despite my love for old cookbooks, I can't deny that the internet is now the preeminent repository for
Getting by, hanging with the
recipes.
birds? That's awesome.
And it'll likely return to us.
No,
with the most
I agree, son.
understanding
I
of the
like that Dylan's doing
recipe.
long-form
I.e.
content for
popular
YouTube.
version. So
It's
what we're
great.
Gonna do now is
It's fantastic.
a Google search for food for the gods, and we're going to start from the most obscure and then quickly blitz our way up to the most popular. And don't worry, I'm not going to bore you because I'm quite aware that I'm likely the only one this interested in this degree of recipe ancestry, but let's go. Alrighty, so we're starting off on a website called justapinch.com with a food for the gods recipe by a Miss Karen Dunn. And look at, she's really looking at the camera. She is right up there. She says this recipe has been in our family for years and years. And if we scroll down, what do we see? Half a pound of chopped English walnuts. They really
I'm sorry,
like
half
English
a
walnuts.
pound?
And the same amount of dates. So we've got walnuts. English
Holy
walnuts, and
mother of
dates,
God.
again in the same quantity.
That's a lot of nuts.
She uses, looky here, crushed soda crackers. So she uses soda crackers.
That's a lot of nuts.
However, this is the largest amount we've seen. 9
That is
tablespoons. That's
wild.
just- what is that if I do quick math? That's a half a cup plus a tablespoon. Yeah, so that's a lot, but it might just be a lot because if we see here, she uses 6 egg yolks and 6 egg whites. So she
Jesus!
2 cups of sugar. Okay,
That's an expensive dish, yeah.
The perennial 2 teaspoons of baking powder. If we scroll down to the method here, what does she do? She makes the baking powder and the sugar, add the dates, nuts, egg yolks, and oh, okay. Whoa. She
Wow.
just throws everything into a bowl. The only thing she does separately is to beat the egg whites and fold them up.
Thank you. Oh my God, Ralphie, I'm so glad somebody got. I'm so glad somebody got the reference. That's a lot of nuts. That'll be $4, baby. You want fries with that? God, that movie. I'm telling you right now, that movie lives rent free in my fucking brain.
Method as our 1961
I need that on my soundboard.
Right? Which
I need
means
that on my
this
soundboard.
recipe is going to essentially do the same thing as the last one, whereby the egg white meringue mixture is going to float to the top and get all crispy and quite hard, whilst the underneath with the egg yolks and the dates and the
Oh my
sugar
God,
is gonna
Ralphie,
get
stop
quite
making me feel
leathery
old.
and omelette and egg-like, which I didn't like.
Ralphie, stop making me feel
Which is
old. Oh my
confirmed
God.
here, as you see that she pours this into a 9x13 pan that hasn't been
Okay,
baked
see,
and
that's the
baked
size
at
pan I have. I
350
have a 9 by
which is the same
13.
amount of time that we baked the 1961 recipe.
I have that
Obviously,
pan.
probably gonna have the same
This is-
consistency, the same texture.
This has been an amazing
So I suppose
deep
we could
dive
not do that
in terms of food
correctly,
history.
but
I'm here
let's
for
move
it.
on. Here we have a Food for the Gods recipe from December 2007 from a personal blog called etherwork.net. And take a gander at these.
Whoa.
Man, they look they look crispy, don't they? This small dish contains food for the gods in air quotes. Yeah, you're damn right about that. You know how
I love it.
children's playgrounds
I love
have
it.
Those like wood chips on the. That's good. Anyway,
I love when he loses it in laughter. It's so good. I love Dylan. He's the best. I love Dylan. He's the best. Holy cow.
Computer enhance. All right, so she uses 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs. That's a lot.
That's a
And as
lot.
Mother's recipe
Honestly,
says,
that's a
graham
lot.
crackers, well, Mother knows best. Why are you disrespecting her? A cup of brown sugar. This is the first time we have seen brown sugar. A cup of chopped dates. Again, we're used to. A cup of chopped nuts. This lady did not specify. She said she used cashews. She only uses 2 eggs,
Okay.
so this is going to be comparatively dry. She mixes everything together, and she used a 9x12 pan. I don't know where people are finding these arbitrary sizes. The most interesting thing about this is she rolls them in sugar, white sugar, as you can see up here. Well, as you won't be able to see because she's, God, this is like in my nightmares. What is this? Here's a recipe on a Spartan-looking page on recipegoldmine.com.
Interesting.
Looking at the ingredients, we have 3 eggs. We're used to that. We're not used to a tablespoon of milk. What's that for? I have no idea. Probably just good luck. Moving on, we have 10 graham crackers, just like Mama used, rolled into crumbs. Okay, so here's.
Oh,
graham crackers
that's right,
once
son,
again.
you're right.
Cup of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder makes the return. The last strange, wood chips recipe didn't have it, understandably. We have a return of the walnuts and a return of the dates. There's no separation.
Oh,
of
no,
egg
Bird,
whites
I
and
agree.
egg yolks, baked in a
Bird, I agree
greased 8-inch
100%.
at 350 for 30 to 40 minutes, and when cooled, spread with butter icing. Interesting.
Whoa.
So this is like a butter icing, like a buttercream, I suppose, and topped with walnuts. So that's about the most interesting thing about this recipe. But what happened?
That is elaborate.
Central.com, written by Anonymous, with the descriptor light and eggy. Now, of course,
Eggy.
I'm fond of the word eggy because I use it enough, don't I? However, not
You
when
sure
it comes
do.
to the taste or the smell or the texture. I really don't like that. Save that for my breakfast. But this person seems to think that's a good thing. To each their own, I suppose. But I do not reckon we need to spend too long on this because look at this ingredients list. We have
Wow.
seen this before.
Yeah.
What is the method? Separate the eggs. Okay, so this is yolks and the whites separate.
Eggy.
Oh, look. Beat the egg yolks until light and lemon colored. We have that repeat again. But look here. Pour the batter into an ungreased loaf pan. That's 9x5. That is going to be really quite thick.
That's going to be thick.
Curious as to what the texture to this one
Thick with a Q.
Now, here's a looker. This is a no-bake recipe for Food for the Gods on allrecipes.com.
What?
Looking at that, well, it's hard to because this was taken by a thermostat.
A
seemingly.
no-bake version?
List, this person uses whole graham crackers.
That's a choice.
For the first time, we have butter. We have brown sugar.
That is a choice.
And gone are the dates, sharing something with the early 1909 recipes that I told you about from Boston that did not call for dates, but just generally dried fruit. But we do still have a cup of walnuts. But look here, there's an icing again. Half a cup of butter, evaporated milk, vanilla custard powder. You boil the butter, the sugar, you boil the egg too, and stir in the graham cracker crumbs. Oh, that just looks a right mess. Here is where we start getting into the meaty bits. This is a recipe for Food for the Gods on thequerinokitchen.com, written by Miss Elizabeth Ann. And she informed me of how popular something called Food for the Gods is over in the Philippines, especially around holidays.
Yes! There it is! Yes! Finally! There's my home country. Let's fucking go. Now it makes sense. Now it makes sense why my mother knew this recipe. Now it makes sense why she made it at literally every family get-together. Let's go. All right.
Here, she describes it as Food for the Gods, dates and raisins bars. And if we move down, looky, they kind of look like blondies, don't they?
Okay, yeah. No. No, that is it. That is it. This might be the recipe.
Down. Looky, they kind of look.
Oh God, I did not mean to zoom in that far. This might be the recipe. This might be the recipe my mother uses, because that is the same exact color. That is the same exact color and texture when my mother makes Food for the Gods. It is Filipino in origin. Ang Pinoy, ah. Ang Pinoy, ah. All right. I'm happy. I'm happy now. That's my country right there. That is my home country being represented. Hell yes.
Look like blondies, don't they? And taking a gander at the ingredients list, we can see that this is completely different.
It sure is.
We have quite a lot of flour, gone are the cracker crumbs, quite a large amount of butter. There's a mixture of white and brown sugar. The whole eggs are there. Vanilla extract, combination of soda and powder. There's even molasses.
Yep, there it is. The molasses is in there as well.
That's cake sponge type things right here.
Sure is.
Different to what we see
sure is. Hey, Obsidian, what's going on? Yeah, you got hit by the sub bomb. Enjoy.
Well, they look good just by taking a look at them, don't they? Which segues us arguably to the most popular Food for the Gods recipe I could find through a Google search, which lies on allrecipes.com again. And like the previous Filipino Food for the Gods that we saw, this resembles a blondie. It's a cake.
That is, yeah. It's a blondie.
Completely different.
Lurking and twerking with a cute dragon. Why, thank you, Obsidia. Hope you're doing quite well.
Again,
hope you're having an awesome day today.
A combination of baking powder, baking soda, salt. We have dates again, returns, without pouring too much by staying on this page for too long. It looks to be just a batter method.
I guarantee you, I swear, if I go up to Mama Dragon next weekend and just be like, can you give me the recipe for Food for the Gods? It's gonna look like this. Chat, I guarantee you 100% it's gonna look like this. Oh, I need to write down, I need to make a note to myself to actually ask her for the Food for the Gods recipe, because I need it.
By creaming together your butter and your sugars.
I need it.
So this is what the internet knows is Food for the Gods. Why don't we give it a shot? So as per instructions, we have a cup of unsalted butter in this bowl, and we're starting with a cup of brown sugar and a cup of white sugar. I am telling you, once you discover sugar in a carton, it will change your life. Then we cream these two together. Yes, of course, you can use a mixer, but where's the fun in that? If you can't tell by my wrists, this is the only exercise I get anyway. Next, we beat in 3 eggies one at a time. Also, does anyone else put their shells back in the carton? Quite a few people find it gross, but honestly, I'm not bothered by it. I'm just lazy. In goes number 2. It was getting sloppy.
I do too. I'm not gonna die.
3. And you see, at this point, we're left with quite a silky smooth batter. This is completely different to the previous recipes we have done.
That's a solid batter right there.
It's gonna be bad. Come now, in this bowl is a cup and a quarter of all-purpose flour sifted alongside a half teaspoon of baking soda.
For what purpose? Like Dylan said, I'm also kind of lazy when it comes to eggshells. Although I will say,
butter and sugars and eggs and all of that.
I will say, I do take the time out when I'm done cooking. I do take the time out to just sift through all the eggshells at once and just throw them out all at once. Honestly, it's a combination of me being lazy and just grabbing everything at once and throwing them all away at the same time. I don't know. I'm weird. I'm sorry.
2, take a half cup of this mixture and add it to our cup of chopped walnuts and cup of chopped dates.
Yep.
Now that's an old trick.
That is an old baking trick.
Nuts and fruits and other add-ins before adding it to the batter proper to prevent all of this from sinking to the bottom of your pan.
Yep, that's an old baking trick.
So that you do not end up with like a layer of just plain cake and then a stodgy clump of all of your add-ins at the very bottom. I'm going to do that. I have no qualms about that. But I am going to ask if you guys have any strong
You know what, Ralphie? That's fair. That's entirely fair.
I've been told that it's a wives' tale.
I can't believe I've just been dragged by a platypus.
But my reason for not doing this is just because there's a proclivity for flour to get stuck within the crevices of the dates and the walnuts and not fully mix into the batter whilst baking. So afterwards, you'll take a bite of something, and amidst your nuts and your fruit is just plain uncooked flour.
Rich, you were on fire today, dude.
When it comes to baking, if what you're doing works,
you were on fire today, dude. Holy cow!
Right, before we fold everything together, I'm just going to grease this here 9x13 pan, which has been fitted with a parchment sling, and that's just a piece of parchment paper which has been cut so that its two ends are exceeding the size of the pan. And
I'm so glad, because I do the same thing whenever I'm baking something like that large. I do the same thing. Let me tell you, chat, the parchment paper sling is probably the best way to depan something this big. All right, it is a lifesaver. If you got access to parchment paper, do this. Do this.
Going to be using pan, which sounds like pan but isn't.
The sling for brownies and blondies and other baked bars is the correct answer. Yes. Agreed. 110%. 110%. Yes.
The oven is almost.
Oh, that looks so good. What the hell?
I think we're about ready. Oh, good timing.
Yeah, very good timing.
350 for 10 minutes, but then we do actually reduce the heat to 300 degrees Fahrenheit for a half hour to 40 minutes. Showtime. All right, take a look at this. It smells like
What was the secret baking trick? I was too busy being a smartass. That's fair, Ralphie. You're forgiven. You're forgiven. You're forgiven. The baking trick is this: the parchment paper sling. So what you do is you place a piece of parchment paper that's a little bit longer. That's a little bit longer than the baking dish. So that way, once you pull the dish out of the oven and once whatever you're baking is cooled, in order to easily depan, all you need to do is grab the parchment paper, pull the whole thing out at once, drop it onto a cooling rack, and just boom, you're done. It's mind-blowingly simple and brilliant at the same time. Won't the paper just rip if you try to pull it out? No, T, because parchment paper is A, quite robust, and B, will never burn in an oven. It's built to survive baking temperatures. I like to refer to parchment paper as the guardian angel of baking, because it will literally save your ass when it comes to taking desserts and baked goods out of the pan and putting it onto a cooling rack. 100%.
Amazing. So we need to let this cool, and then we cut it specifically to 36 bars. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Look how easy that was. Look how bloody easy that was. Literally a life-saving kitchen hack. Look at that.
Cut it specifically to 36 bars.
Behold.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Yes.
And this is what we are left with, the most popular recipe for food for the gods on the internet. And I mean, it doesn't really look like the picture, does it? But it seldom does, let's be honest.
I feel like this is the recipe, or this is close to my mother's recipe. I will let you know after next weekend, chat. I will let you know after next weekend when I see Mama Dragon.
Oh, wow. It's good. I like it, but it's very rich and it's very fatty. If you take a look at the proportions of the recipe, there's almost a 1-to-1 ratio between the butter and the flour. So it makes sense as to why it's this oily. But with that being said, it's good. It's a good, like, variation on a blondie. But that's also why I didn't stop my mission here, because there are a lot of blondies in the world. It is cakey, and there are
many blondies, yes.
It did not get me as excited as that first 1909 recipe with its unique combination of texture and flavors. So, with this being explored, how about we rewind a little bit? Yes, if it wasn't painfully obvious by now, I have baked all of these before. I have been through this gauntlet just a few times, because let me tell you, healthy experimentation is a necessary process toward the goal of writing a cookbook.
Exactly,
in
yes.
my cookbook, Baking Yesteryear, you will find my recipe for food for the gods situated within the 1900
Oh,
section. Specifically, you'll find it on
all
page
right.
32. And you'll find
All
it nestled
right, here we
quaintly within
go.
the aughts, because it has indeed been derived from our first 1909 Michigan Federation Food for the Gods recipe. However, it has since been rewritten, adapted, workshopped, and vetted to be not only replicable, but if I dare say, better. So with mine, I began by slicing the recipe in half. So instead of being based on the whites of 6 eggs, my recipe is instead based upon the whites of 3. The largest change that I made was increasing the dry ingredient proportions, the cracker crumb proportions in regard to wet by nearly 3-fold. And I did indeed specify the usage of graham cracker crumbs because I really quite like that flavor, that nuttiness.
Okay.
Plus, like the
All right.
varieties or some of the cakey varieties of food for the gods that we saw, I like the fact that you could sink your teeth into those, right? They had some bite and they held up on their own. Because let's face it, near most anything served with whipped cream is bound to taste good. So that was the reason behind increasing the graham cracker crumb proportions.
All right.
Plus,
All right.
helped
All right.
prevent a lot of the weeping that we saw with that first recipe. Another thing that I really quite respected about the Filipino varieties and some of the other 1909 recipes that I was telling you about was the fact that they did not restrict themselves to only dates. Sometimes they had raisins in addition to dates, or sometimes raisins and a whole other host of dried fruits in place of dates, which is why in my recipe you'll find that I actually call for dried apricots. Why? Because not only were they widely used at the time, but because they slap. I'm beginning to realize that I'm likely boring you to death by just being sat here wagging my chin. So shall we bake the bloody thing? Let's begin by appeasing the French and getting everything in place before we even deal with the whites of the eggs. Starting with cracker.
I feel because I know, because I've been in the industry, I know that 99% of American cooking techniques have been derived from French cooking techniques. So the phrase appeasing the French feels excessive to me. Because in my mind, anytime we cook anything is appeasing the French. So, yes. Thank you for that hydrate redeem, by the way, Ralphie. I need it.
You can go ahead and use the pre-made variety. I'm quite a big fan of these myself. I use them a lot in things like pie crusts. However, I don't think they taste as good. Plus, you need to watch the sodium on these, the salt on these, depending on the brand.
I assume appeasing the French is about getting a lot of fat into a dish. That and unionizing. And protesting.
Returning to the subject of flavor and taste, I actually prefer using whole graham crackers and then rolling them into my own crumbs. Specifically,
mounting a sauce, adding heavy cream. Yeah.
I think they taste a little better.
I will judge you at your final hour, protesting in the streets. Hi, Ash, how you doing?
However, if you're anything like me and you inhabit
I knew it. We talk about I knew it. We talk about the French enough. Iashi appears, or reappears in this case. Love you, buddy.
Across graham crackers very easily. So a lot of bakers will tell you to substitute in equal measure things like digestive biscuits all crumbed up. However, I'm a big fan of using malted milk biscuits, specifically Tesco's variety, all made into crumbs, so give that a shot if you're so inclined. With my recipe, we will be
I was always here.
crumbs,
French uprising detected. Time to be scarce.
Crumbs in a food processor. However, I have this crazy theory. Can I prove it? No. I think that physical labor tastes good. This also goes along with my core philosophy of believing that one does not need any fancy kitchen equipment to make things that taste good.
That is the old school way of doing
Make sure
it.
Your crumbs are very fine. It's quite paramount. Perfect.
That's the old school way of doing it.
I of course kept the walnuts, but because the recipe is now in half, we'll only be needing a half cup chopped. I want a black walnut treat. Now for the half cup of chopped dried apricots. Do make sure that these are chopped particularly fine because elsewise
That's
they can be quite chewy.
nice.
Also, I'm surprised you've not made a comment on my quantity of bananas back there. Look, I'm a lonely man. Now I've had many a conversation with a great number of people who
I know. I use the bottom of a coffee mug. Nice.
Open-ended they can be in regard to their add-ins, in regard to their ingredients.
I use when it comes to crushing graham crackers into graham cracker crumbs, I literally just use like a cup measure in a plastic bag, or if I'm just feeling supremely lazy, I will literally just toss them into a food processor and pulse until they're powder.
I.e. many cookbooks from the 1900s, 1910s, right the way up through the 60s might just say, add in a half cup of nuts, or half a cup of dried fruit. Whereas people today seem to quite prefer just to be told what to use, right? Tell me to use raisins, don't leave it up to me. I don't want to have to think. I'm being facetious now. Hopefully baking was quite different back then. It was more so about utilizing what you had lying about your kitchen to make something of sustenance than it was strictly adhering to what a recipe was supposed to be. Take my recipe, for example. I call for half a cup of dried apricots because 1, the flavor profile in tandem with graham crackers I think is brilliant. 2, they were widely used at the time. However, I still keep the historical suggestion of dates alongside the suggestion that you could use any dried fruit. Use currants if you got them. Are you a Fig Newton fanatic? Use figs.
Absolutely.
A half cup of dried apricots, and I seem to have got too much.
Because I'm Filipino, I would probably use dried mangoes in there. Because literally my favorite fruit. Literally my favorite fruit of all time. I love mangoes. Oh my god.
What a shame. Guess I'll have to have a snack. We also need 1 cup of granulated sugar at the ready. So for my recipe, I call for a 9-inch springform fitted with a parchment round, and we are going to lightly grease both.
Dried mangoes we're trying a version of this with, right?
And then I actually like to roll it with a paper towel and spread it around, plus wipe out any excess. No matter what you say, I still suits me. Only 3 egg whites this time.
So this man goes bananas for them? Thank you, Rich. Boop.
Now, what was simultaneously the most significant and insignificant addition in my recipe was simply the use of salt. I call for a half teaspoon. It really needed it because it's quite a sweet dessert. We actually beat the half teaspoon with the egg whites. Again, watch the sodium in your graham crackers or your graham cracker crumbs. You'd be surprised at how wildly they can vary between brands. If you want to be safe, do just use a 1/4 teaspoon. For the egg whites, I ask us to beat them stiff, and then once they're stiff, we gradually beat in the sugar 2 tablespoons at a time until stiff and glossy.
So the classic French meringue.
So this is what you're looking for when beating
Yep,
egg whites
there it
stiff.
is.
The peak should be standing straight up, not flopping over, even when you move it around.
Classic French meringue, yeah.
This took me about 6-7 minutes. At which point we fold in the cracker crumbs, but not all at once, and that just aids in even distribution. And then our chopped dried fruit and our chopped walnuts. Oh, look at that. Look at that.
That looks so good, actually.
I do
Wait.
instruct the use of a 9-inch springform with a parchment round, both lightly greased. It just makes things a lot easier and a lot less messy. However, I also realize that not everyone has a springform. And my philosophy with my cookbook is that I never want to
I'm telling you right now, everybody should own a springform pan. It is life-changing. All right? As somebody who's made many a cheesecake in his lifetime, I'm telling you right now, invest in a springform pan. Your baking life will thank you.
anyone to feel left out. So, you can actually make my food for the gods recipe in a standard 9-inch pie plate. Pie pan, if you have one. Just have a parchment round in the bottom, lightly grease that, and lightly grease the sides. Just note that it might come out looking a little
I feel like a hoarder, but I think I own like 7. That's 6 more than I own, Bird.
But just dollop this in evenly, and you lightly press down and even it out, trying not to move the parchment. Do smooth the top as best you can. And then into the oven at 325 Fahrenheit for about 35 to 40 minutes, and by then the top should be a pale gold color.
Oh,
so as one
interesting.
See the difference in at least ingredients between my recipe and the original 1909.
Yeah, that's
it's not that magnitudeness. Sure, I switched up the dry ingredients.
192816 instead of 34. Wow, very nice.
Powder, which is not needed in meringues, right? If you do your
I only
meringue
need. I only own a single 9-inch springform pan, but like shit's life changing. Let me tell you. when I made a cheesecake in a springform pan for the first time, like, it felt like the universe opened up to me. It's just like, man, what have I been missing out on?
Enough leavening, enough air bubbles, enough lift. And, you know, even if baking powder were to add a bit more leavening, it makes it even more hormonal and liable to fall if you don't do things absolutely correctly. So yeah, the changes with regard to ingredients was not that major. And that's for good reason, because you go about switching things up too much, and you're no longer going to have a food for the gods recipe from 1909. In my mind, this is a great way of staying true to the original recipe and making it replicable. And
yeah, no, I agree. That checks out. That's pretty good. That's good, solid reasoning, honestly.
The cookbook came from workshopping the method, because as I think I've proven, the recipes in old cookbooks are spotty, to say the least.
They sure are.
This looks good, so what I'm going to do is turn off the oven, actually leave the pan within the oven, and crack the door. Leave the door ajar for about 30 minutes to allow this to dry, which is a bit of a nonsense term. What we're really just doing is allowing this to come to room temperature less intrusively, which helps to guard against cracking.
That's brilliant! That's brilliant! You literally let it come to room oh my god, that is actually brilliant. Holy cow. Huh. That is actually a brilliant way to not let it crack on the way out of the oven. Because the temperature shock. Wow, okay.
Your oven should actually have an indentation, much like a car door at this point, which I like to think is specifically for this purpose. Before you do this, if it doesn't look done, even at 40 minutes, if it's still moving up and down or breathing, so to speak, you can leave it in the oven at temperature past 40 minutes. This is most likely to happen if you're using a pie pan, and if that pie pan happens to be glass. I've never liked the baking characteristics of glassware, especially when paired with a parchment ground. The bottom has a tendency to get undercooked and gooey. And no one likes a soggy bottom, as we all know. We are just going to take it out of the oven and then let it cool to room temperature completely. That's very important, and that should only take about 20 to 30 minutes. Once completely cool, run a thin, sharp knife along the edge.
So, in my case, it'll be a paring knife, okay. Yeah, Bird, that checks. I get that.
And then with a cutting board at the ready, all you need to do is invert gently, remove, and then just take off the parchment paper. Voila! So in this manner, my recipe is a...
That is incredible! Wow!
Torte. Not a torte in the sense of a multi-layered filled cake, but torte in the sense of a cake that is not bound by flour, but rather nuts or crumbs. This, of course, being graham cracker crumbs. It's very similar to a backwas. And the great thing about my recipe is that it can be sliced.
That's kind of brilliant, actually.
Visualizing it, I hope you can see how incredibly unique this texture is. All right, here we go, and I'm just going to pick it up.
Get the fuck out. That's so good. Wow.
I mean, it's just heaven. Truthfully, it is. It's got that nice light airiness like that of a French macaron, yet the chewiness, the blunt notes.
I was about to say that looks like a giant macaron. That legitimately looks like a giant macaron, which is one of my favorite food textures in the world. Oh my god.
Contrasted with the nuttiness of not only the walnuts, right, but the graham cracker crumbs. And it's all in this very unique, chewy, marshmallowy, airy package, yet a very delicate crispness on top. It's fantastic. Because let's face it, we've had the pies, we've had the cakes, we've served the cookies. We love them, but they're familiar. The past has proven to me to hold so many new, exciting varieties and desserts, such as food for the gods. And I think it's just the most wonderful thing. But of course, they aren't new, are they? They're just begging to be rediscovered. And that's what baking yesteryear is all about, if you don't mind my saying. Yes, it is chock full of all things wild, wacky, and wonderful. I've crammed 101 recipes in here for you. Everything from unique dessert
wow,
like
101
to fan favorites that I've done on my TikTok, and of course, plenty of beloved classics. I do hope that today's exploration gave at least
macarons are a bit finicky, Ralphie, if you don't know what you're doing, yeah.
And the rest of it's what
macarons are a bit finicky.
A child of mine, and I am very proud of it. With that being said, I still can't in good conscience keep this recipe from you, so even if you don't want to buy the book, I understand. You'll still find my recipe for Food for the Gods in the description below.
Let's
and I'll
go.
also pop in the original 1909 Michigan Federation recipe if you want to give that a crack. Elsewise, thank you kindly for sticking around for this long, and I hope to be seeing you quite soon.
Holy moly. I want to try this recipe. It sounds really good. I could make this right now, but with figs, and I want to. Dare I risk it on a broken leg that's feeling pretty good? Maybe. Bird, please be careful. Don't hurt yourself again. Oh my god. Bird, please be careful. That is really good.